Hello, and welcome to The More the Merrier, How to Achieve a Multi-Dog Household Success. I am Renee Rhoades, and I am the face and founder behind R Plus Dogs. I'm a training and behavior specialist. So today, what I wanted to talk about was when you have multiple dogs. Either you already have multiple dogs or you're thinking about adding another dog to your family. So giving an idea of what that looks like, what that feels like, and how to best set that scenario up for success, both for humans and for the dogs involved. So in the beginning, there was only one. This is my lovely Nero, who was an only dog for about 6 years. And then things got a little crazy. This is Lycan, and we added him to our household about 2 years ago. He is a working line German Shepherd, and he is intact and a totally different character to Nero. Just, opposites pretty much through and through. So the aims of this presentation were busting myths on multiple dogs. There are a few things that people think about having multiple dogs, so I just want to cover those topics. I want to provide insight into what adding another dog is like, what it's really like if you haven't done that before, what is management and how it helps a lot, how to cope with different activity levels and needs, understanding what good relationships look like, and what to do when things go sour. So busting myths first. Best friends forever, help with separation-related distress, no different from having one dog, need to be with their own species, siblings, opposite sex. Well, these are questions I think sometimes people wonder when they're adding a different dog to their home. Are they going to be friends forever? Does your dog already suffer with some separation-related distress? Is that going to help getting a second dog? Is having one dog no different from having, multiple dogs? Kind of one, and is that the same? Siblings, is it better to get siblings or is it better to just get a single dog? Coping with their own species. So does a dog need another dog in order to feel happy? And opposite sexes. So sometimes people think if I get a male and a female, that might be okay. Or if I get two of the same sex, what is best? So friends forever? Maybe not, maybe so. Again, it's one of those professional kind of situations where we say, it depends. Help with separation related distress? Maybe not, maybe so. Depends on the dog and depends on the reason why they have that separation related distress. If it's to a caregiver, then getting another dog probably isn't going to help that dog. If the dog just doesn't want to be alone, it may help. No different from having one dog? Absolutely not. As we'll go into, having multiple dogs is a division of time. Having another dog, adding a different dog, you may end up with a scenario like I had, where I have two very different dogs and they have two very different sets of needs. Need to be with their own species? No, not necessarily. Dogs, again, have been domesticated and they have been kind of molded into our companions. So need to be with their own species? Maybe not. Need to be with us? Definitely. Siblings, no. So there's the littermate syndrome, which you may have heard that term before, and it's not necessarily a factor. So you can have siblings and it be really successful, or you don't need to take a sibling. You can just have a single dog on their own as long as you're meeting their needs. And opposite sexes, so no. So what we look at here is, this was an infographic that I created not too long ago talking about intra-household aggression. So this is available on my social media, and I'm sure you can find it. But the biggest takeaways from this study, and this was a 2020 study, so a relatively recent study that reviewed 9 years of records. The biggest takeaways were females. So 70% of 70% of the pairs included a female, while the highest rate of aggression was noted between the same-sex pairs, with female-female being the highest at 31.8%. So females, same-sex pairs, The aggressors were younger, heavier, and newer, so added after the dog who was having the aggression noted on it. There are comorbidity factors, and those largely are anxiety. So we see down here resource guarding, noise phobia, and aggression towards unfamiliar dogs and people. 23% of the people who were surveyed noted that the triggers were inescapable. So even though the dogs did have these comorbidity factors, 23% of them were just part of life, and there was no way to get away from those. The main takeaway from this is that early prevention is key. So when these surveys were happening, they did ask, did you look for professional help? And they did, but many people found it to be something that they relied on as a last resort rather than a first port of call. So what is it like adding a second dog? So it can be beautiful. It can be heartwarming. It can be so fun. This was Nero when he was a puppy, and he had my beagle. So that was a dog that I had. I had her for 6 years by herself. I have like a 6-year itch maybe. So she was an only dog for about 6 years. And then I introduced Nero, and they got along like a house on fire. They had lots of fun. They cuddled, they slept together, they played together. I feel like she really relied on him as a source of comfort. She didn't have the best start to life. And she actually had a lot of issues as far as being able to socialize with other dogs. She would get overwhelmed very, very quickly. And unfortunately, she was very ill when she was young, so she never got to have those experiences until about 8, 9 months old. So they had a fantastic relationship, the two of them. Unfortunately, she passed away very suddenly, and then that same week, we had moved house. So that was a very traumatic experience for Nero. And I spent a lot of time just focusing on him and him alone. And sometimes it's just a lot of management. So sometimes it's beautiful fun. The dogs love each other. But you can see here, Lycan is on his bed, and that is where he primarily rests. He has freedom to move around if he wants to. And then you have Nero here on the couch. So have the dogs been on the couch together? Absolutely. Do I try to manage the situation as much as possible? Absolutely. I would hate for Nero to be resting and Lycan come up and try to get on the couch, maybe on top of him, or disturb him while he's sleeping. And that was something that we had a lot of in the early days. Was Nero wanted to rest. He's older, and Lycan wanted to play. So that was something that we had to navigate. So management. What is management? Management sets your dog up for success. So it's setting up your home in a way that you can utilize the space and provide barriers. In this you kind of see that he sleeps in a crate at night. The crate is covered. We have blinds, and then we also have window films because he likes to bark at birds. Sometimes he likes to bark at things if they come into the yard in the middle of the night. And then have a baby gate. So this is his room. This is where he goes to have enrichment. This is where, he goes to sleep. This is his space. And it's important because you need to have separation of space when you have two dogs. And most of the time, this gate is open. He can go into the room whenever he wants to. But sometimes if I need them to be separated, this is where he goes into, and he feels very positive about going into that space. It's not a punishment. It's let's just have a bit of separation for the time being. So things that my dogs do together. They are free in the house when they're supervised. They have outings, so they go out into public. We go for safaris. We go, to the beach. We go for different activities, and they do that together. They also go potty or play in the yard. So they are primarily unsupervised, but this is mostly for short periods of time. So things that the dogs do separately, and you can see this list is pretty much double. So they do not eat together. They do not sleep together. Most of their enrichment-based activities, so things like chews, any food that they get, toys, play, anything like that, they do separately. So Lycan goes into his room, the gate is shut. Nero can play with whatever he wants to on his own. Do they play together? Yes, they do. They will play outside together, and they will play when we're out on outings. So absolutely fine for them to play together. Do I want them to be unsupervised in the house? No. So they also have one-on-one time with us, both me and my partner. And that's a really important thing, that they have that separation of time. And they're never alone in the house together. So if we leave the house, Lycan goes into his room, and then Nero he's trusted to have the freedom of the entire house. So what do you do if you have different activity levels, different needs? You need to be management, number one. So we talked about management. You need to have this in place already so that it's something that your dog can go ahead and, just go into that space, and it's a positive space. A lot of people neglect management a lot because they think, the dog should have freedom, and the dog should have freedom. But there are certain times where we definitely need to make sure that we're meeting the dog's needs as far as space and stepping in when we need to. The other thing is meet your individual dog. So, like I said, my dogs, they have different interests. They are different types of personalities. You need to get to know the individual dog before you can decide what their needs or activity levels are. One-on-one time, this is important. I think part of meeting the individual dog is to spend time bonding with that dog. And again, be proactive instead of reactive. This is something I tell my clients a lot. There are two different types of behavior with us, and being proactive goes along with having management in place. So what do good relationships look like? This is definitely one where they come in all shapes and sizes, but the most common aspect is that each dog is happy, fulfilled, and cared for according to their needs. Dogs will have occasional fights, but when we do, we need to learn from them and give the dogs time to decompress. This is really important. So if you remember the pictures of my Beagle and Nero, they're totally different from the pictures that I get to take with Nero and Lycan. The pictures I take with Nero and Lycan are more like the picture in front of you, where they're active, they're out, they're doing things. And then the pictures with my previous Beagle and Nero were very cuddly. They were very close. They spent a lot of downtime together. And then equally, the dogs have a great relationship with me. So I want to make sure that I'm cultivating a really great relationship with them so that they trust me, that they listen to me. And that, that is the number one thing between the two dogs, is that they definitely have a good relationship with me, and I'm able to help them have a better relationship by understanding them and catering to their individual needs. So when things don't go according to plan. So if you remember that intra-household aggression meme, this is some tips based on that, as well as some other advice. So when the dogs do have a squabble, which they will have a squabble, dogs do fight. They do have occasional fights. We've had a couple. Nero and Lycan have been together for about 2 years now. And this is something that they've had one fight. That was very early days, and it was absolutely my fault. So you want to separate the dogs immediately. You want to give them a few days to decompress. Now, this is important because we kind of get them back together and we want them to, repair their relationship, but they need time to let that stress level decompress. So let it decrease. You want to reintroduce them outside between a barrier. So a barrier is something that will give you that space if they, show any kind of signs. Body language is a great thing to make yourself aware of if you're not already. Be very, very fluid in body language. That will help you to understand and sometimes even prevent fights from breaking out. So reintroduce them outside between a barrier. Do something fun together, but not together. So this is like parallel walking, or if you're playing, I wouldn't say necessarily to have a resource with you, but make sure that the dogs are able to not have that direct competition, but be in the same space while doing something fun. Give them plenty of space to go to, both in and outside of the home. Give them an out, basically. Allow them to decide, no, I don't want to be around the dog. I don't want to be around the other dog. I want to be able to be on my own, and that's okay. You also want to assess what went wrong. So in that situation, if you've made a mistake, like I said that, early on, I made a mistake, that mistake has not happened since. So I learned from that. I assessed the situation. I saw what happened. And then I decided, right, that is something that I messed up on and I won't let that happen again. So always assess what went wrong. And if you're not sure what went wrong, that kind of goes into getting some help from someone, getting a professional to kind of pick that apart for you. If the behavior is very odd and it's nothing that you've experienced with that dog, definitely get a vet check. So make sure that your dog has no internal, external, there's nothing going on with that dog medically, which has caused them to react in that way. So sudden changes in behavior should always have a vet check. And again, this goes back to early intervention is key. So contact a professional. When we looked at the meme, what we found is that people did not go to a professional early on. They let it kind of simmer and fester. And that makes it harder for us when we come in and we want to help you. We have a lot of history that's negative that we have to combat. So I love this meme. I don't know who created it, but this, I think it sums it up pretty much well. If you're thinking about adding another dog to your life, so you want another dog? Excellent. I want a dog that is a good match for my lifestyle. Good, that's great. I want a dog. I want to take the time fully, make sure that I'm prepared to be a responsible dog guardian and I'm capable of caring for my dog for their entire life. Excellent. That's the optimal kind of situation that we want with our dogs. So when you are thinking about adding another dog to your life, think of this meme. And if somebody knows who it belongs to, please let me know. But that is what you want. So adding another dog it shouldn't be as selfish. It is in some forms, it is a selfish kind of act, but at the end of the day, make sure that you are fully prepared for that second dog. And that is my talk on multi-dog households and how to make them successful. And now I am going to open the floor for conversation and questions. So thank you so much. This is where you can find me. So you can find me on Instagram. I am on Clubhouse. I am on YouTube. And I also have a podcast, which is called Dog Logical. And you can find that anywhere on wherever you stream music or where you listen to podcasts currently. You can also find it on my website, where you can also find virtual consultations. That is primarily how I do most of my work. So thank you very much for your time, and I hope you have taken something away from this.